know Megan Searfoss, and I think that she has really established herself very well in town, and she has started and is the owner of the Ridgefield Running Company right on Main Street. And this company has really done extraordinarily well in recent years and has received a lot of acclaim nationally. So that in the years 2018, 2019, and 2020, it has been rated in the top 50 running stores in America. In 2019, it was rated in the top 10. In 2020, in the top 4. So that's progress, boy. Megan has also started and has really been a strong promoter of the annual Mother's Day event here in town, Run Like a Mother, a 5K race, and it's really a lot of fun to watch. And it's taken on elsewhere throughout the country as well, so it's really a great thing. Megan has also written a book on running entitled See Mom Run, Every Mother's Guide to Getting Fit and Running Her First 5K, which seems pretty great. Now, as you can imagine, Megan has been a very active runner herself. She's been in over 20 marathons, including Boston, and has a story, I guess, to talk about the 2013 Boston Marathon. She's been in 9 Ironman events, and that definitely puts her in a class by herself, including the Ironman World Championship events. But in addition to running and writing and promoting running, she's been very involved with volunteering, significantly involved with volunteering, such that she was honored by the Ridgefield Library with their Piccadilly Award for Volunteer of the Year, which is really an extraordinary phenomenon. So, Megan, we're really proud to have you here tonight and honored to have you here tonight and join us, and love to hear what you have to say.
Great. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to Kathy Graham for inviting me. Kathy's watched me grow up in Ridgefield, as Fairfield County Bank has been a very large part of my journey, loaning me money when I need it, and it's I look forward to visiting with Kathy every time I stroll down Main Street to deposit my coin into their account. So it's really cool to bank local, as it is just as cool to shop local, and Kathy's been a big part of it. So thank you, Kathy. And when Kathy asked me to do this, I said, you know what? I speak a lot, but I usually speak to young women about how the stresses of being on social media can really be bad for you, in that you're sitting, watching, scrolling and seeing cute girls in swimsuits that you don't look like and you're not like, and the stress level of you goes up, and that stress that you feel when you have that anxiety is actually meant to be moved. It's a fight or flight mechanism that's meant to be used to move. And how, like, turning off your social media and getting out and running is probably the best thing that you can do as a young woman, actually anybody for sure. So I told Kathy I would do a quick talk about trusting my crazy ideas, because I think that's pretty much what's been my over the past at least 20 years. So, and kind of make you guys a little bit more aware of what's happened in Ridgefield with me, and what's really Ridgefield has given back to me. So I want to show you this sign that was given to me in 2008 after the first Run Like a Mother, and it was given to me by a friend, and it says, "Trust your crazy ideas." And I think that that's a premise that that I always talk about, in that if you have an idea and you think about it and ruminate with it enough, that soon you should start vocalizing it and telling your partner or telling your friends, because then it starts to get, like, the roots start to happen, and your idea can actually come. You did a great job, Joseph, of introducing me. I have a slide I was just going to show, and if you're just coming in, it's always easier for me to talk off. Also, maybe don't fall asleep, because you can look and laugh a little bit. But a little background about me. I am a 9-time Ironman triathlete. I'm actually going to try and do my 10th this year if the world opens up in Ironman Lake Placid. Founder of Run Like a Mother and author of Steam On Run, owner of Ridgefield Running Company. And by the way, this picture is 10 years old. I like to use it because now somebody else has seen it. Makes me feel good. But it's actually not those Ironman triathlons and all of those things that I've done that make me feel successful. It's the average runs that make me whole, and that's where my best ideas come, and that's where my world's problems get solved. I can leave the door angry and go out for a run and come back and like, whew, feel a little bit better. So let's get started. This is actually a better picture of me. This is me when I was 5 years old. I do have the teeth still, but the brain and the hair are kind of the same, as you can tell. I always like to bring this up because it makes me a little bit more real. I have 3 daughters. I'm a child. My parents had 3 daughters. My mom grew up with 3 daughters. I gave birth to 3 daughters, my husband and I. And right now, my oldest is a teacher in Wilton, having graduated from UConn in the 5-year master's program, and she's actually getting her admin, and she teaches special ed at Cider Mill. My middle daughter, Sarah, is graduating this year with her master's from NYU in global public health. How timely. And my youngest is graduating from UConn this year. They have, with all the businesses and the races and the things that I do, it's my kids that are really the drivers of my life. They're the influencers, and they're the ones that are my biggest cheerleaders, for sure. And so now I just kind of want to give you a little example of how I got to this tiny town of Ridgefield and how I probably will never leave. I was born in the 60s, 1965, I'm 56, in California. This picture was taken in the 70s, and no, it's not dress up. That was how we got dressed for Christmas. My mom made every single one of those outfits, sitting at the sewing machine, probably in the middle of the night, with a cigarette in one hand and a glass of wine in the other, because we grew up in Sonoma County. And this is how she dressed my dad, and this is how she dressed us. They still live in that home after 55 years, my parents, and that deck is there, but those outfits are long gone. As a kid, I was athletic. I played soccer and volleyball, but what I really did was I threw the discus and the shot put. And the only reason I did that was because my dad was the track coach, and that was my only ride home. To this day in Santa Rosa, I still, I think, hold the record at Santa Rosa High School for the discus, or I might be right up there. Last I checked, I did. So this is the California in me that won't go away. And when I was about that age, I began to realize how important fitness was. And this is a New Year's resolution from, I think, 4th grade, where number 1 says, run up and down the street every day, every week. Number 7 says, ride my bike. And number 15 says, stop eating so much. And as we all know, New Year's resolutions usually last till about February 14th. And it's long gone. But this, every year I bring this out and I look at it, because number 10 is super relevant. Pay attention to my family. Number 9, read books. I mean, these are things that a 4th grader me is writing to me every year in the future. So I don't make resolutions anymore. I just look at the 4th grade me. In the 70s, my dad started running, and this was at the very beginning of the running craze. And I watched him train and run for marathons, and I thought it was the craziest thing. This is back in waffle trainers, flat shoes, cotton t-shirts, the whole thing. Not like what I have behind me right here. His shoes were probably about 20 bucks, and if they got a hole, he glued them. But I watched what he did, and I was really, really inspired. My dad's 87 now. He's had Parkinson's disease for the last 30 years. And so now every run I go out, I think about him, and I run for him, and I share stories. If I'm home in California, I take pictures of the places that I run and share them with him. He is truly, truly my inspiration. Fast forward to 1994, when my sister was living in Carmel, California, and I was living in San Diego, and she called me on a real phone, you know, the one with the cord, and said, hey, do you want to train for a marathon? I thought, sure. I'd never even really run. And she said, let's do the Big Sur Marathon. Well, if any of you know about the Big Sur Marathon or have been along Highway 1, it is one of the world's most difficult marathons. It's very, very up and down and hilly. I did it the day before. This was back in the 90s when carbo loading, those terms were really big. And so I did what I thought I was supposed to do the day before. I ate an entire loaf of fabulous Carmel sourdough bread. Woke up in the morning with what I call a food baby, a belly that made me look about 7 months pregnant, and I ran the race. But I was hooked. That was the beginning of everything. I was an athletic trainer all through college, and I studied kinesiology. I really actually wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, but I wasn't. I enjoyed college too much, and I wasn't refined enough to get those studies done. And actually ended up graduating in rhetoric. So who knew? But I learned everything I could about anatomy, kinesiology, physiology, and what it meant to be a good runner and how to be successful in it. I soaked everything up I could. And it was a really, really exciting time because I was working full time. I had a 2-year-old, and running was really my outlet and my passion. At that time, I was following my husband's career. We moved about 8 times in about 12 years. And I always made sure that my kids had friends. And then once they did, I would settle down and find my group of friends. And that was a really big, important part of my life. At that time, I was running a lot of marathons. And I had those 2 more children, Sarah and Jane, and I was really in heaven. And then in 2003, my life totally changed. My husband became very, very ill with Crohn's disease. And Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease that actually affects you from the tip of your tongue all the way to your bottom. And it just decides picks and chooses where it's going to come. And we were living outside of Chicago, about 30 days in the hospital. Now, he's a giant man. He's 6'5" and about 210, very physically fit, played basketball every day. When he left the hospital, he was 30 days later, he was 155 pounds. And he was a mess. And during this time, my passion for running and my learning for running got put aside, and I learned everything I could about our new disease and what I could do for him. During that time, I ran for peace. I ran because I was angry, and I ran crying. It was a really, really difficult time. But as he healed, I started to fall in love with a new sport, and that was triathlon. And so in 2005, I competed in my first ever triathlon, and we did it as a fundraiser for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And I actually raised $50,000 for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. That year, the race in Wisconsin, it was Ironman Wisconsin, was known as the Carnage Man because it was 100 degrees, and nearly 40% of the people didn't even make it off the bike. But I was yet again hooked on another new sport. Fast forward to 2006, and I moved to Ridgefield, Connecticut. And after settling the kids into their routines, I started to look for people that ran. And I found this fabulous group of women. And we met at Steve's Bagels, and they still do every Sunday morning. We met and we became fast friends. None of us really connected by our children, but just by our common love of running. And then I introduced them to triathlon, and this was actually a women's triathlon that we did that year. So that was in 2006. In 2007, the group of us decided to each of us invite 2 or 3 friends to meet at Steve's Bagels and go for a run on Mother's Day. And it was a blast. We had about 40 or 50 women that walked and ran, and we all celebrated each other and had a great morning. And so then in 2008, about 6 weeks before before Mother's Day, I woke up and I'm like, run like a mother. Wouldn't that be funny? We should do a 5K called Run Like a Mother. So I got really excited about it, and I called Jeffrey Morris and Evan McGerald, who were then putting on the Ridgefield Triathlon. And I said, hey, you guys, what do you think? I actually had them over for milk and cookies. And they said, well, you know what? You'll probably get about 50 women. And so you should do it on the rail trail. You won't spend any money, that sort of thing. So I reached out to Rudy Marconi. I talked to the police, and they said, you can do it on the Turkey Trot course, which is the 2-loop course up around Yanity. So back then, there really wasn't social media like Facebook and Instagram and that sort of thing. So I sent a couple emails to PTA message groups. All the women that were in that previous picture, we all sent out emails, hey, run like a mother on Mother's Day. And within 3 days, I had 500 women signed up.
Huh.
And it was nuts. I had raced quite a bit, but I'd never put a race on. So it was really, really exciting and scary at the same time. So I closed the race at 500. Carla Murtaugh was my first sponsor of the race. She actually helped me get it all organized, and we had a really successful race. I raised, we raised over $15,000 after I paid all of my expenses. And I was so excited. I took that and wrote the whole entire check to the Hole in the Wall Gang camp, only to realize that when you show revenue, you get taxed on revenue. So I got taxed on every single one of those dollars, and I had just donated it all to them. So that was business lesson number one for me, is now Run Like a Mother, which has been helped so many different charities, but has really found a home at the Ridgefield Library. Now, all of the sponsors of the race, such as Fairfield County Bank or BMW, they don't write the check to the business. They write the check directly to the Ridgefield Library. So that's kind of a great way to keep it where it is. So this rendering was drawn by my 80-year-old aunt when I told her I had a logo and I needed a logo in a race. And you can see it's the evolution of a woman going from pregnancy to running free. I like to think of myself as the far end, the far side, not the pregnant side. And this is what the logo looks like today. We had it digitized. It still has the flavor of it all, but this is much better for social media than the previous one. That year, we had 500 women run, and I quickly realized how important it was for women to set a goal and cross a finish line. And that Run Like a Mother finish line, and just you touched about it a little bit, if you've never seen it, it is one of the most wonderful things in the world, because you have so many women who have never done anything like this cross that finish line, and their kids are on the sideline. It's like the one time in their life that their kids are cheering for them. And it's a really, really, really special place to be. That year, which was 2008, I competed at Ironman Lake Placid, and I qualified for the Ironman World Championships. Only 1% of Ironman athletes will ever get to go to Kona, so it was a really special thing to me. I felt accomplished, invincible. It was fabulous, but I kept thinking about that Run Like a Mother finish line and how it doesn't matter the distance. It's just crossing the finish line that's super, super important. In 2009, we introduced the kids race, which was really cool. The kids 1 mile, which the dads and moms can do with the children. It happens before Run Like a Mother. And that year we closed the race at about 800 athletes. And it was really, really exciting. Unbeknownst to me at that point, my whole family life was kind of falling apart. That fall, my daughter Abby, who was a senior at Ridgefield High, captain of the basketball team, had been complaining to me about her bottom hurting and how she would have blood after a bowel movement and that sort of thing. And I thought, oh, teenager, you need to hydrate, eat more fruits and vegetables. You're not doing the right thing. Never in my wildest dream did I think that she would have Crohn's disease. It was my husband's disease. I didn't realize that there's a genetic component to all autoimmune diseases. But by the time that we got her diagnosed, which was right after swim season, beginning of basketball, she ended up actually having surgery she ended up having surgery in November. I began to look harder at my second daughter, who was in middle school and running cross country, who had not gained any weight at all, and started to realize that she had canker sores in her mouth that were chronic, a lot of like precursor things to Crohn's disease. And so I took her to the doctor, and sure enough, we got the diagnosis that daughter number 2 had Crohn's disease. Wow. Yeah. And that day, my husband said to me when we found out, why don't you go out for a bike ride and kind of clear your head, and we'll talk to her after school. Well, I went out for that bike ride, and I rode my bike up Farmingville Road up to Lounsbury, and I got T-boned by a driver on my bicycle. As I was sliding across the pavement, I thought, wow, Megan, you sure have a craptacular life. Like, there are these great highs and these really bad lows, and this is probably one of them. I was okay, banged up quite a bit, but ready to tackle what was going to be happening with our daughters. In 2009 in November, then that's when Abby had her first surgery. This is Abby, and after her surgery, the day after Thanksgiving at New York Presbyterian. And amazingly, she had that surgery in November, and in January, she was back on the basketball court at Ridgefield High School and finished her season. But it really, really changed our life. That was in November. In February of 2010, our youngest daughter was also diagnosed with Crohn's. And so we had hit the trifecta of disease in our family. Actually, with Sean, that's 4. I don't know what you call that. But it was really, really rattled me. And during this time, when Abby was in the hospital, I'd run up and down the stairs. I'd do whatever I could to be by her side, but then to try and clear my own head, I ran quite a bit. Abby became a huge advocate for Crohn's and colitis, and we actually got to speak on Capitol Hill that year and advocate for what's called I think it's called the Lisa Law, allowing people to use public bathrooms or bathrooms in retail establishments, that if they have to go, they have to go. And there's actually a little card that they can present if somebody turns them down in the bathroom. Connecticut hasn't passed it, New York has. And it's a really important thing. And the reason why my bathrooms in my stores will always be available to whoever needs it at that time. During this time, I started writing quite a bit. I wrote articles for Run Like a Mother. I wrote for a couple of fitness websites, Fit Studio and things like that. I shared recipes. I talked about my life, and I just did as much writing as I could. 2010, I competed again at Ironman Lake Placid. This year, also qualifying for the Ironman World Championships. And this year, we used it as a fundraiser for our entire family for Crohn's and colitis, and also raised another $50,000. It was a really, really special time of my life. We got to take the whole family out to Kona. And the first time I did Kona, it was a practice run. It was really tough. If you know anything about the weather there, it can be really, really nasty hot and really windy. This year, in 2010, I came off the bike, number 10 in the world in my age group. I was going to crush it. Got out onto Ali'i Drive, which is where you saw that previous picture of me running. And I felt like somebody kicked me in the back of my leg. And I turned around, nobody was there. And turns out it was my hamstring sort of leaving the building. And I was only about 1.5 miles out on the marathon. It's a 26.2 mile run after a 112 mile bike. And I was like, what am I going to do? I could quit. And then I thought, you know what, my kids, they can't quit. They can't quit their disease. They don't have a choice. So I need to show them I can get through this. It's just a run. And I always have this philosophy: if it's not my brains, my lungs, my heart, I'm going for it. So I hopped and skipped my way to the run, and hopped my skip right into a torn hamstring. This is a picture of Noreen Papa. Some of you may know John Papa in town. Noreen was an integral part of Run Like a Mother, and she was diagnosed in 2013 with colon cancer, and died that year. But the reason I bring this picture up is she used to stand at the corner of Main and Governor, which is now called Mother of a Hill, on Mother's Day, and yell and scream and get everybody out and moving. And she is the reason why we have the Noreen L. Papa Mothers Live Your Life Fund at the Ridgefield Library, and what Run Like a Mother donates to most of the time. In 2013, I ran the Boston Marathon, and had a perfect day. It was actually one of the most beautiful days I've ever run Boston. It was a perfect run. My race was awesome. And 7 minutes after I crossed the finish line, the bombs went off. It was terrifying. And I didn't know where my family was. I was heading back towards the finish line at that point, through a sea of people running this way, bloodied and crying and screaming. And it really changed my life. Being part of that, being part of something so exciting and so celebratory, have just ripped away from you, was really difficult. I wrote a blog post then, talking about, if those terrorists love themselves enough, if they took care of their bodies, if they went out and ran, they couldn't possibly do this. Like, people that have self-love and appreciate themselves are not bombing other people. And that blog post at that point, that's very early blog times, went viral. And it got picked up by, this is Noreen, got picked up by a publisher, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But Noreen then ended up passing away right after the Boston Marathon. She was a huge cheerleader of it. This is her daughter, who now is a sophomore at Indiana. And she was the one that actually would always tell me, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And I didn't believe her. We did the race that year for her. After I did that race that year, I ended up with my hamstring having to be repaired. And when Noreen, these slides are out, I apologize. When Noreen had told me, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, I'm like, I don't have time to write a book. I ended up with a torn hamstring that had to be surgically reattached and on crutches, non-weight bearing for 6 weeks. During that time, the second day that I was laying down like this, the publisher reached out to me and said, hi, my name is Chris Adams. I'm part of Adams Publishing. We read your blog post. We think you should write a book. We want to write a book. We want you to write a book about women in running. Now, how that happened in the universe at that same time that I had to sit and not move was quite amazing. And he gave me a really tight timeline. I think I wrote the book in about 12 weeks. It was always in my head. Noreen always told me it was. And so that's when I got to write that book, when I was just pretty much exactly as you see that picture. I went back in 2014. I ran the Boston Marathon again, just to be Boston strong. It wasn't as fast, but I did it, and I crossed the finish line, and it kind of made everything feel right in the world with Boston. I'm hopeful this year it happens. It's going to be virtual, but I'm hoping that it does. Then right after that, I opened up Ridgefield Running Company. Crazy idea, really actually number 3, with Run Like a Mother, and then See Mom Run, the book, See Mom Run, the book that I wrote. I opened up Ridgefield Running Company in 2014, down at 88 Danbury Road, right behind Ridgefield Bicycle, and then moved it up to Main Street in 2019. Took a big risk with opening this running store. I actually didn't believe I could do it myself. I had a partner who has since moved away. I bought her out a year and a half or 2 years after we opened Ridgefield Running Company. She moved to Baltimore. I had a hard time as a woman trying to pitch to brands that I could do this. I had no retail experience except for working in a bike shop at Bethel Cycle for many years. And talking to bankers and trying to get everything open, it was quite a challenge, but I did it, and it's been the passion for so long for me. Here's my pitch to you guys right now is Run Like a Mother, See Mom Run, Ridgefield Running Company are all about my passion and all about movement. Just know that you need to get out. Your movement may look completely different than mine, but get out and move 5-10 minutes every day. It does your body so good. That's my elevator pitch. We need to make that happen. Here's a quick just look at a couple of things. As Joseph said, we're top 4 running store in the nation. When COVID happened, I had to totally reinvest in my own business. I switched my point of sale system to be iPad mobile. You come into our store, there's no cash register, there's no cash wrap. Everything, it's like the Apple store of running stores. Everything is on an iPad with a little scanner. And the technology changes that we've made, I think, keep us as one of the top stores in the nation. We have a 3D scanner that we use. Everybody gets their foot scanned, picture of their foot. We watch them walk before we decide which one of these hundreds of shoes that we have. I actually have about 2,000 pairs of shoes in the basement at any time. In July last year, I opened up Darien Running Company. Really excited about that. I replaced a store that had closed in January. They were in desperate need of a running store. There'd been a store there for 40 years. And I took a chance. I had negotiated the lease, but not signed it in February prior to COVID. And in March, I was like, well, maybe I should just do it. And so I renegotiated the lease. I hadn't signed it, so that was good. And they made it really interesting for me to come to Darien. This building that I'm in is not quite as old as the one that is here on Main Street, but I really love it because it is an older building. And I feel like that older building with the technology inside is a really cool message. Ridgefield Running Company and Darien Running Company had a couple of really cool community activations this year. We had the Hometown Holiday Relay, which got people out moving during Christmas time. And then the Frozen Feet Street Challenge, which we had 1,800 people sign up in January to walk or run or move 1 mile every day outside. And you couldn't do it inside. You had to do it outside. You had to record it. It was on the honor system. We benefited the Norwalk Valley River Trail, which just got funding in Ridgefield. So the path is going to extend, which is really exciting. And we had 1,800 people start, and we had 600 people make it 6 weeks and run all those 42 days. We're on a walk. All those 42 days. So when they come in, we give them a t-shirt. It's a huge marketing expense on my part, but it's a really, really cool activation for us. And we love seeing everybody walking up and down Main Street during those cold months. This year was terrible because of all the ice. We had one day that we allowed a mulligan where you didn't have to go out because we felt it was dangerous. But for the most part, we had 600 finishers. So I gave out 600 t-shirts. And if you might have seen when we opened up, a cool thing happened when we opened up Darien Running Company is I got a big article in the New York Times about the opening of Darien Running Company during the pandemic. So that was kind of a cool thing. I think it brought a lot of business our way. And it was fun to talk about being a risk taker and trusting your crazy ideas to the New York Times. So that was cool. And so that's the end of my presentation.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. It really is.
Thank you.
What a story.
What do I feel lazy?
Yeah, that's right. It's just before people have questions for you, I'm sure, I just want to point out there's a gentleman just scratching his head there, Bill Wyman, who walks at least 2+ miles every day, maybe even towards 5 miles every day up and down Main Street. And Bill, you go from Rockwell all the way around to Dunkin' Donuts and back. So he probably would have qualified for that. Bill, did you actually sign up for that?
Unmute.
No, I did not. I thought about it, then we didn't. My wife and I walk 3.5 at least every day. But February was a bad year or bad month this year. And I think there were 2 or 3 days we did not go out.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But next time sign up, you'll get a free shirt.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Do people feel? Go ahead.
Megan?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. With this Crohn's disease, does your husband's family have it? Or was he the first one to develop it?
So he was the first one to develop it, but there's a really interesting thing about autoimmune diseases. And if you know anybody that has one, when you have an autoimmune disease is the opposite of like AIDS. AIDS is where your immune system is suppressed, and autoimmune disease is when it's on just tilt. So Crohn's autoimmune disease, the body attacks its own intestinal tract. When you have an autoimmune disease in your family, there's a 30% chance that somebody else in your family will have an autoimmune disease, not necessarily the one that you have. So we didn't know where it came from until Sean's mom died, and we went to the funeral, and in walks his aunt. She has a patch on her eye, and we said, what's going on, Aunt Jane? And she said, I have Graves' disease. So there's another autoimmune disease. It's very rare for it to happen like it did with us. We were the poster child actually for New York Presbyterians Gala one year because we're kind of an anomaly. The cool thing about this disease is technically it won't kill you, or it shouldn't. It's manageable. There are a lot of biologic drugs now. All of my children are in clinical remission, and all of them are on a different biologic drug. The scary thing is that these drugs, because our insurance is so crazy in the world, these drugs can cost up to $26,000 a month. Is what this is what the infusion centers will charge, so that they can get paid 3, right? They have to bill so high. So my concern always is with our children and what in the direction of healthcare and what might happen to them in the future. So Sean and I are, we're planning on helping them if they ever need it, to get the correct healthcare.
The other question I have with the Achilles, I'm sorry, with your hamstring that you needed surgery, did you actually dislodge the Achilles tendon completely?
No, so it was a hamstring. So if you can just reach up to the bottom part of your butt, that's where the hamstring attaches. And I actually have had both of them reattached. And part of that is because I'm a very stubborn person and I love to race, and I'm a mind over matter kind of person. So I'll work through a little bit of hurt to get where I need to go, which I think is what is a blessing and a curse. And I'm always putting myself out there. I always say fail forward. And in this case, I failed my hamstrings trying to get to a dream that I
asked you the question, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the club. That was my sport a long time ago, cross country, long distance running. But a common injury, and it probably just was training. We're going to go all the way back now to the 60s. But yeah, it was Achilles tendon, a lot of injuries and whatnot, awful things. And that's why a tremendous amount of effort was in warm-ups and stretching and whatnot before we would go out and run. You're a remarkable lady. You've got a terrific family. Thank you so much for sharing with us your ups and downs and your ups again. And it's been a pleasure being part of watching your program tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Got a question?
If I can, David Martin here. When you're, first of all, how much do you run every day? Or do
I
you
don't
run
run every day.
Okay. So when you do run, what do you, 3 times a week or?
Yeah, so my running has really changed. I think as we get older, my hope is that I will always be running. I run typically 25 miles a week, maybe not a ton unless I'm training for something, and then that will ramp up, but it ebbs and flows. Right now, most of my running is done in the trails. And that is like the most beautiful thing that you can do in the world. And Ridgefield is probably, it's like a Disneyland for trail runners. It's just, we have so many great parks and places to run, but it's much kinder on your body. It's much more of a mindful thing than just walking on the sidewalks or running on the sidewalks. You actually have to think about where your foot's landing and what rock and that sort of thing. And it's really good because your speed changes. So as I get older and my tendons and ligaments don't want to cooperate as much as they used to, I can always hike.
Now, do you find yourself, I'm going to run today, but you're kind of putting it off or whatever, and then you just, I'm going to do it. So you're very determined. You go out and run. When does it change psychologically for you during the run? Is it at the end, or do you get the rush from it during?
So that's a great question, because I do most of my exercise first thing in the morning before I have a chance to say no. And most of the time I'm up and out, by 5:30 or so. I'm a very early morning person. I like to get up, have my coffee, do a little bit of work, and then head out the door. And so it's just become part of my life. And I just head out. And there are some days that I'm like, oh, no way I'm going to do this. I always tell people, give it a mile. And, and if anything, turn around and go back. But go out for 15 minutes and you can turn around. But usually within about that first 15 minutes, my mind is so on what I'm trying to plan for the day, what I'm trying to do, solving a problem, coming up with an idea of how to do something differently, that I don't even really realize what's going on.
I think there's a certain buy-in, that people have to have, especially people that maybe played a lot of sports earlier in life and so forth, and want to come back into the fold, if you will. And there are so many rationalizations that people come up with and saying, not today, et cetera. And that buy-in is a challenge, I think, for some people, but probably just going and doing it and experiencing that first couple of weeks or whatever it takes to have you say, this is a good thing and I'm going to keep on doing it. And realizing that maybe your legs and your lungs and everything else are not quite the same as they were back in the day. But I could see that happening. But it does take that first period of time to overcome all that stuff.
Well, Bill will probably tell you, if he's doing as much as he's doing, that it beats a blank.
Yes.
Get out for 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes will get, as soon as you get out the door, you'll be happy you did it. During COVID, boy, the pandemic, first of all, I'm looking at the numbers of where I was last year on this day, and how I worked probably about 18 hours a day to keep this store open. It wasn't open, to keep business going. I went omni-channel, I went online, I did all those things. And that was a time that I really had to give up running, because I was trying to keep the business from falling. And but I still would try to get out every day, and it just becomes part of your routine, and it becomes part of what calms yourself down. I just really, really think it's an important part of it. All I could think of during that time was I have 18 employees that a lot of them count on me for the revenue. And I had to keep the store open, but I had to keep my sense about myself, because if I got sick, it was going to all be bad. So I kept moving them.
Yeah, during my working career, I ran 4 miles a day, and I would do it 5:30, 6 o'clock. And that's how I started a day.
Yeah. And if anybody knows the now principal of Ridgefield High School, now his name's Jake Greenwood. We're so fortunate to have him. He's a great guy. He's an ultra marathoner, and I actually coached him in his first couple of triathlons many years ago when he started as a teacher at Ridgefield High. He goes out and runs, and he actually runs with his AirPods in, so that when he comes up with an idea or how he's going to plan his day, he can say, Siri, remind me to do this. So he actually takes it to another level. I always jokingly say, I don't run with music or talk on the phone or whatever, because I have so many personalities and things going on in my own brain that I can have my own conversations with myself and get more done than if I was to take notes, probably.
Obviously, loving yourself is very important in that whole concept.
Yeah. Well, if there's no more questions, I thank you guys.
Oh.